Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to Guys and Magic. This is Hunter and Steven. Say what up, Steven.
What up, Hunter?
We are back, this time taking a look at another Precon upgrade guide to the Doctor Who Precons. This one is a blast from the past.
Yes, it is, Hunter. It is a blast from the past. I wish I knew more about Doctor Who. I think they call this a blast from the past because it contains Doctors 1 through 8.
That is correct. Now, our resident Doctor Who fan, Shane, only knows 9, 10, and 11. So he's no help when it comes to this old stuff. But I'm curious to see what you're doing with the deck. So before we get started, I just want to remind everybody that we made a Patreon. That is right. If you guys wanted to support us any extra than you already do, go ahead and check the description for the link. You don't have to if you don't want to, but for those looking to just help out the channel just a little more than you already are, it's in the description. Let's get started, Steven. Talk to me about what your deck does and what the commanders you are picking.
So this deck is super interesting because if anybody watched the professor's video on the release of this deck, you could literally combine so many doctors and companions to the point where you could play this deck once a week for an entire year and play a different doctor companion. It's insane. It
Yeah.
was a little much to go through, to be honest.
What is there, like 8 doctors and 8 companions?
Yeah, it's really aggressive, but to be honest with you, I just kept it pretty simple, and I just kept it with the Fourth Doctor and Sarah Jane Smith. But let's go ahead and get into the deck a little bit more. So the Fourth Doctor is 2 and a green and a blue for a legendary creature, Time Lord Doctor. It's a 4/4, and it says you may look at the top card of your library at any time. It also says, would you like a ... question mark? Once each turn, you may play a historic land or cast a historic spell from the top of your library. When you do, create a food token. The companion here will be Sarah Jane Smith, which is 1 and a white for a legendary creature human detective. That's a 2/1. And then whenever you cast a historic spell, investigate. This ability triggers only once each turn. If you don't know what a historic spell is, this is artifacts, legendaries, and sagas in your deck.
Yeah. Okay, so you're doing all the kind of artifact matters a little bit, right?
I mean, pretty much, yeah. Artifact matters. Just make a whole bunch of artifacts. I kind of took a fun stab at what David did with the Rashmi and Ragavan deck, and just kind of wanted to build on that, obviously in a different color scheme.
Alrighty. So we've got the commanders, we've got what the deck wants to do. Talk to me a little bit more about these additions you're adding into the deck.
Yep, so I'm going to talk about the big boys here really quickly. So first up, we have Academy Manufacturer. This is 3 mana for a artifact creature assembly worker. It's a 1/3, and then if you would create a clue, food, or treasure token, instead create one of each instead. So obviously, really just playing into a board wipe at that point. I feel like when this comes down, it's going to get targeted pretty hard, but it is a fun card. And in our deck, it goes absolutely wild.
Yeah, the production Academy manufacturer actually creates is pretty insane if you let it sit around long enough.
And then obviously, tokens are fun, but what if we had double the tokens? So we have Mondrak, Lori Dominus. This is 2 and 2 white for a legendary creature, Phyrexian Horror. It's a 4/4. And then if one or more tokens would be created under your control, twice that many of those tokens are created instead. Then you can pay 1, a Phyrexian white, and you can sacrifice 2 other artifacts and or creatures, put an indestructible counter on Mondrak, Lori Dominus. So really pumping out a ton of tokens here, trying to make as many treasures, creatures, clues, foods, whatever you can possibly dream of, we're going to make. And then if somebody tries to play a board wipe, we're going to have so many of them. We're going to make this indestructible.
Yeah, it seems pretty easy just to sack 2 little clues to make this indestructible.
Yeah, this deck was kind of fun. I wasn't thrilled about getting this deck when we first picked, but to be honest with you, after playing with it and play testing it's kind of aggressive with the token production. But Hunter, I know what you're thinking, buddy.
What am I thinking?
Tokens are fun, but what are you going to do with all those artifacts, those clues, those foods? They're not like treasures or anything. But if we have Urza Lord High Artificer, which is 2 and 2 blue for a legendary creature human artificer, When he comes into the battlefield, you create a 0/0 colorless construct artifact creature token, and this creature gets +1/+1 for each artifact you control. You can tap an untapped artifact you control to add 1 blue. Then you can have a little fun spinny wheel game, and you can pay 5, shuffle your library, exile the top card, and until end of turn, you may play that card without paying its mana cost. And it's also a 1/4. If you're new to EDH, Urza is a very powerful commander in its own right, but in our deck, it really can just make it very aggressive.
Yeah, and back in the day, Urza used to cost so much, but he's been reprinted so often that he has dropped so aggressively that it's now in our $100 upgrades. I love it.
I mean, that's what I was very shocked because I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to add this and Mondrak, and I saw the price of Urza was like $8, and I was like, here we go, baby. Hunter, did you ask another question? What are we going to do with all of these artifacts? Is that what you asked? Well, Cyberdrive Awakener's here to kind of answer that question for us. So this is 5 and a blue for an artifact creature construct. It has flying, and it's a 4/4. Other artifact creatures you control have flying as well. And then when this enters the battlefield, until end of turn, each non-creature artifact you control becomes an artifact creature with base power and toughness 4/4.
Wow, that seems pretty aggressive. You put this down, and then all your clues and foods and treasures just become 4/4 flyers.
That's the plan.
Seems like a good finisher.
It's an extremely good finisher. This is definitely one of my favorite cards that I added to the deck. It is very aggressive, and if not dealt with immediately on the stack, it can really end the game. But if ending the game with a bunch of clues and treasures and foods isn't your type, we also have Adrix and Neb, twin casters, because we just want more. This is 2, a green and a blue for a legendary creature, Merfolk Wizard. It's a 2/2 with Ward 2. And then if one or more tokens would be created under your control, twice that many of those tokens are created instead. Hunter, are you sensing a theme?
I'm sensing a theme of a lot of token production.
I'm going to make so many. I also added Gilded Goose. This is 1 green for a creature bird. It's a flying 0/2. When it enters the battlefield, create a food token. And then you can pay 1 a green, tap it, create another food token, or you can tap it, sacrifice a food, add 1 mana of any color. I wanted a mana dork, and I needed something that makes me food, and this is definitely a good one.
Yeah, the goose is loose.
Well, I had to have the Gilded Goose, but I also brought the Mother Goose. This is X, a green and a blue for legendary creature bird Hydra. It's a flying 2/2, and then when it enters the battlefield, it comes in with X +1/+1 counters on it. And then whenever Goose Mother enters the battlefield, create half X food tokens rounded up. And then whenever you attack with it, you may sacrifice a food if you do draw a card.
Card drop for all your food, man. It's pretty good.
Yep. So we're just making an absurd amount of tokens. We're trying to draw with them. This it gets a really aggressive. I'm actually kind of nervous about the board state I'm going to have.
I'm getting nervous just thinking about me playing against it.
Yeah. And last up, we have Thazarian Witness. This is 1 in the green for a creature alien cleric. It has flash and it's a 0/4. It also has Bear Witness. Whenever another creature dies, if it was attacking or blocking alone, exile it and investigate. I believe this was a card from your deck, Hunter, the Paradox Power deck.
It was, yeah, indeed.
Yeah, this was kind of fun. I mean, obviously, I kind of wanted to keep it. I tried really hard to just pick cards from the Doctor set instead of adding cards from Magic the Gathering. Um, but to kind of like buff it out, I did add just 1 card. But this is a fun one. Obviously, there's always a ton of creatures attacking and blocking, creatures dying all the time. And to just flash in a 0/4, it's definitely going to be nice. So I just kind of wanted to add it.
Yeah, it seems really good in your deck. But those are all the creatures I see. Tell me a little bit about the sorcery department.
Well, the sorcery department's just as fun. So we have probably one of my favorite new additions for any artifact deck. This is Rise and Shine. This is 1 in a blue for a sorcery. Target non-creature artifact you control becomes a 0/0 artifact creature. Put 4 +1/+1 counters on each artifact that became a creature this way. It also has an overload for 4 and 2 blue. So you can change that from target to each. Gets you the win, baby.
Yeah, this card's very similar to Cyberdrive Awakener, where it's just a finishing card. If you can get that overload cost, all your clues and foods and everything become 4/4s. Ugh, that's a that's a mean way to win.
Yeah, I mean the cool thing too is they're both 6 CMC. So Cyberdrive Awakener is 5 and a blue. This is 4 and 2 blue. And to be honest with you, I just Cyberdrive Awakener is the better of the two in my mind, just because obviously it gives you that flying evasion. But when you got an army, what does it matter? I also added a really fun one, Hunter. So obviously this is a historic themed deck, so we have a lot of legendaries going on. So I put in Urza's Ruinous Blast. 4 and a white for a legendary sorcery. You may cast a legendary sorcery only if you control a legendary creature or planeswalker. And this says exile all non-land permanents that aren't legendary.
It's gonna be quite mean.
Quite mean for everyone but me. Yes, you're right. This does actually wipe out everything I built, but with all of my artifact production being legendary, essentially, this is just a small hump and I will just rebuild.
We must rebuild. I can see you doing it very easily.
hmm
All right, well, those are the sorceries. I am seeing more artifacts. We've been talking about artifacts this far. Show me some more.
Well, since we are making a ton of tokens, it just made sense to add Idol of Oblivion. This is 2 for a artifact. You can tap it, draw a card, activate only if you created a token this turn. You can also pay 8, tap it, sacrifice it, create a 10/10 colorless Eldrazi creature token. Obviously, that second piece of text is nice, but let's be honest, we just want that card draw. Also added Inspiring Statuary. This is 3 for another artifact. Non-artifact spells you cast have improvise. If you don't know what improvise means, basically you can use your artifacts to cast spells. Hunter, we're making a lot of artifacts, so this is going to be a killer card.
Yeah, your clues and foods become mana rocks, essentially. Pretty good.
hmm And I do like casting multiple spells a turn, so let's go ahead and throw in an Unwinding Clock. This is 4 for another artifact. Untap all artifacts you control during each other player's untap step. Who needs Seedborn Muse when you got this?
Yeah. Using all the tokens that you just tapped down with Inspiring Statuary and then just untapping them at your end step to use them again. That seems pretty doable in my eyes.
Yep. And with the budget for this deck being kind of low, I did have a little fun and I did add a Sensei's Divining Top. This is 1 for an artifact. You can pay 1, look at the top 3 cards of your library, then put them back in any order. And you can tap this, draw a card, and put Sensei's Divining Top on the top of your library. This is a really fun card just because the 4th Doctor allows us to look at the top card of our library, and then once each turn we can play a historic spell. Also, with Sarah Jane, when we're casting these historic spells, we're investigating, so we're getting more stuff. It's a really nice value engine for sure.
Yep, all those artifacts, they make sense being put in the deck. But besides artifacts, we do have that other permanent called enchantments. Show me what you got.
So I added 2 enchantments. One is probably another win con, funny enough. That is Mechanized Production. This is 2 and 2 blue. This is an enchantment aura. It says enchant artifact you control. At the beginning of your upkeep, create a token that's a copy of enchanted artifact. Then if you control 8 or more artifacts with the same name as one another, you win the game. Hunter, spoiler alert, I added a bunch of artifact lands that are indestructible.
That's a pretty good way to do it.
Yep. And I mean, to be quite honest with you, even if that's not the way you want to go, I just think it's kind of fun to constantly make more land and hit your land drop, and just it gets really aggressive. It's bringing Simic to another level.
Yeah, and who knows if you make enough clues or foods or whatever, and you drop this on one of them, someone's gonna have to deal with them very quickly, or you're winning on your next turn.
Very much so. I also added Michiko's Reign of Truth. This is 1 and a white for a saga. It's got 3 chapters. The first 2 chapters say the same thing. It says target creature gets +1/+1 until end of turn for each artifact and or enchantment you control. The third chapter says exile the saga, then return it to the battlefield transformed under your control. The backside is Portrait of Michiko, and then it says it gets +1/+1 for each artifact and or enchantment you control. So 2 really fun enchantments for an artifact themed deck.
Yeah, that is a pain to deal with, that Michiko. I do love it though. You did mention you're changing the land base into some artifact lands, so I'm curious. Give me all of the land changes.
So I added pretty much every land for this color scheme that is an artifact land. I added Thornglint Bridge, Tanglepool Bridge, and Razortide Bridge. These are artifact lands; they're indestructible. They do unfortunately come into the battlefield tap, but listen, we're playing a $100 upgrade, so it's not too powerful, so it's good. And then I also added Ancient Den, Seed of the Synod, and Tree of Tales. These are all artifact lands as well. These do not come in tapped, but they are also not indestructible, so be wary of that. And I also added a fun one. This is a legendary land which we can play from the top of our library. This is Academy Ruins. You can tap it for a colorless. You can pay one in a blue, put target artifact card from your graveyard on the top of your library. So if somebody gets rid of something fun, guess what? You're going to get it back.
You're gonna get it back. Academy Ruin is a great card in any artifact themed deck that is running blue, which you are. But is that gonna do it? Is that all of your additions for this $100 upgrade?
Those are all the additions, my friend.
Okay, now we get to the part that might make people upset because those are the fans of Doctor Who. We are taking some things out. Tell us what you're taking out to make room for all of the additions.
Yeah, this is definitely going to upset some people, and I get it. But at the end of the day, we want to play Magic and we want to make these decks a little bit better to play with. The Precon is pretty good as it is. One of the first cards I cut was Susan Foreman. This is one in a green. You can tap it to add a green. It's a companion, but it's a Planeswalk card, and obviously, we're not going to be playing any Planeswalk, so this was a pretty easy cut for me. Also got rid of Sergeant John Benton. This is one a green and a white. It's got trample and haste. And then whenever you attack, and then whenever John here deals combat damage to a player, you and that player each draw that many cards. So yes, it would be fun to draw two or one depending on if they block with a 1/1. But I don't really like helping my opponents draw cards, so I got rid of this pretty quickly.
Yeah, it's a pretty interesting card. I would have cut that card as well because I also do not like helping my opponents.
Yep, my opponents just need to die. Perry Brown is three and a white. First historic spell you cast each turn has Convoke. Basically, main reason for getting rid of this, it is for CMC, and it's only a 2/3. We're also not trying to go terribly wide on the creature base, so I don't really care for the Convoke. If it had like Infinity for artifacts or something like that, or Improvise, I think that probably would have been better. Joe Grant was next up on the chopping block. This is two and a white. Each historic card in your hand has cycling two and a white. We're not trying to cycle everything away, so didn't really care for that. Plus, it only pumps itself when you do this, so I didn't. It's whatever.
Cycling on a motorcycle.
Who would have thought it?
What else are we cutting in the creature department?
All right, so these next three creatures I'm going to talk about, let's put them all up on the screen together. These are creatures I would put back in the deck if I wanted to make any swaps. The first four I talked about, I don't care at all about. I got rid of them immediately. These three were a little bit on the tougher side. First one up is Dugan Private Detective. This is two, a green and a blue, and its power and toughness is equal to the number of cards in your hand, and then whenever it enters the battlefield or attacks, investigate, which is obviously what we're trying to do with our deck. It also says the most important punch in history. For one and a green, you can tap it. It deals damage equal to twice its power to another target creature. Activate only once. So pretty cool. I'm not gonna lie. But we're not trying to draw a ton of cards, so its power and toughness aren't ever going to be super, super strong. Now, granted, we're making clues, so we could just draw cards, but for 4 mana, this deck can do a lot more. So I just had to pitch it.
Yeah, I get that.
Next up, we have Leela, 17 Warrior. This is three and a green. And then whenever an opponent draws a card, except for the first one they draw in each of their draw steps, put a +1/+1 counter on Leela, 17 Warrior. Now, this is 4 mana for a 3/3, and I'm hoping to God that my opponents are drawing more cards than just one. I mean, it's a fun one, but 4 mana, it's a lot of mana to spend on a creature that's not really going to do anything, possibly. So, right on the bin. Next up, we have Romana the Second. This is three and a white. It's got Vigilance, and then you can pay one, tap it, create a tapped token that's a copy of target token that entered the battlefield this turn. So obviously we can make a token copy of a treasure or a clue or a food or a creature that came in. This is fun, but I there's so much token production in this deck that I don't need to spend 4 mana, wait a turn, and then pay one and tap this.
Yeah, and you're making the token tapped as well. So you did make a treasure or a clue or a food. You can't even use that until your next turn as well. It's weird.
Hmm.
All right, well, those are all the creatures I see. Talk to me. We did talk about the sorcery department. I'm seeing more sorceries here that you're removing.
Yes, and here's where the hate will start to flow. So I got rid of Twice Upon a Time. This is 4 and 2 blue. It says cast the spell only if you control 2 or more doctors. Take an extra turn after this one. Exile Twice Upon a Time. It's also an adventure. The other part of the sorcery is unlikely meeting for 2 and a blue. Search your library for a doctor card, reveal it, then put it into your hand, then shuffle. It's pretty fun. I just I don't know. 6 mana. 6 mana to take another turn. There's just no point.
Yeah, I saw this card in my deck as well. It's interesting. It's definitely a tutor, and you'll eventually take a turn. Hopefully, if you have those 2 doctors, but the stipulation there of taking an extra turn for 2 doctors, I didn't see. I could see why you cut it.
Hmm. And please don't hate me too much for this one, guys, but I did get rid of the 5 doctors. This is 5 and a green with kicker 5. Search your library and/or graveyard for up to 5 doctor cards. Reveal them and put them into your hand. If you search your library this way, shuffle. If the spell was kicked, put those cards onto the battlefield instead of putting them into your hand. I really heard David in the back of my head when I was debating on getting rid of this card. It is pretty solid, but for 11 mana, I should be winning the game on the spot, I feel like.
Yeah, can you imagine if you spent the 11 mana to cast this and kick it, get all 5 doctors onto the battlefield, and then you pass your turn and someone board wipes?
I would hate my life, dude.
Yeah, I could see the exact reason you cut this. I think I would do the same, to be honest. Moving on to your artifacts. Which ones are we cutting out?
Yep, I got rid of Sonic Screwdriver. This is 3 for a artifact that does a few things. So you can tap it, add 1 mana of any color. You can pay 1, tap it, untap another target artifact. Pay 2, tap it, scry 1. Or you can pay 3, tap it, target creature can't be blocked this turn. I'd rather just put a Commander Sphere in my deck, I guess. I don't. I didn't really care for this whatsoever, which kind of sucks because I feel like the Sonic Screwdriver is like the coolest thing the Doctor has, right? Other than the TARDIS.
That's like his main weapon or
Yeah.
tool. Yeah. Don't hate me. I don't know the exact lore.
I mean, the best thing on this card, if I'm honest with you, is definitely the tap 3 target creature can't be blocked this turn because we do have some ways to get some pretty big things in this deck, but I don't know. Just it wasn't appealing enough for me.
Hey, if you tap one of your artifact lands, you can pay the one that you just tapped to untap the artifact land, so it's not doing anything.
All right. I don't even want to think about that. Ace's baseball bat is up next on the chopping block. This is 2 for legendary artifact equipment. It says equipped creature gets +3/+0. And it also says as long as equipped creature is attacking, it has first strike and must be blocked by a Dalek if able. Equip legendary creature for 1 or equipped for 3. I I don't care. We're not trying to pump. I mean, I just want to go wide. I don't want one thing to be doing a lot.
Yeah, this equipment is very specific to the other Masters of Evil deck that makes Daleks. Um, Sometimes when you're not in the pod of just all Doctor Who decks, you want to be playing against everybody else. That relevant Dalek ability is irrelevant.
And the last artifact I cut here, Hunter, is going to be Hero's Podium for 5 mana. You get a legendary artifact that says each legendary creature you control gets +1/+1 for each other legendary creature you control. It also has pay X, and then you can tap it. Look at the top X cards of your library. You may reveal a legendary creature card from among them, put it into your hand, put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. So you can pay 5 mana to build up your board state, and then you can pay some more mana and tap it and put a card in your hand.
Sometimes you just got to make room for the food, clue, treasure stuff, and that Hero's Podium is not it. Well, we saw you added two very good enchantments. What are some of the enchantments you're taking out to make room for those?
So I got rid of a saga and a regular enchantment. It was kind of tough actually because this deck actually was built pretty well. But the one I got rid of that didn't make enough sense for the deck and what we want to do was the Caves of Androzany. This is 3 and a white for a saga with 4 lore counters. First one says put 2 stun counters on each of up to 2 target tapped creatures. Chapters 2 and 3 say the same thing. It says for each non saga permanent, choose a counter on it. You may put an additional counter of that kind on that permanent. And the last lore counter says search your library for a doctor card, reveal it, then put it in your hand and shuffle. This is good, I guess. 2 creatures have to be tapped. It's very specific. I don't know. This card didn't really do enough for me.
It's one of those cards very similarly to the Aces baseball bat, where it's specifically against another deck. So putting those time counters on, say, the timey-wimey deck. Yeah, I get it. But in a regular deck, doesn't fit.
Yep. And then I also got rid of Day of Destiny. This is 3 and a white for a legendary enchantment. It says legendary creatures you control get +2/+2. That's it.
A little too plain in my eyes as well.
Very plain. A little vanilla.
And of course, we saw all of your land additions. Tell me all of the lands that you're taking out to make room for all of those additions.
All right, Hunter. First things first. Let's get this first part out of the way really quickly. Uh, what you'll notice is I did add 7 lands, and I am removing 9 lands. This deck was built with 36. I removed 2. I myself am a very comfortable Magic player when it comes to only having 34 lands. Some people may not be, but with the aggressive amount of treasure production this deck can pump through, I'm not worried about it. But first card I did cut was Ash Barrens. I cut this out of every single deck. I don't like this card. Tap for a colorless, also has basic land cycling 1. I also got rid of Scattered Groves. It enters the battlefield tap. It has cycling 2. I didn't care for it. I also got rid of Vine Gliver Snarl. This one comes in tapped unless you reveal a island or forest from your hand. Well, funny enough, Hunter, I didn't remove any basics, but there's only 3 forest basics and 2 island basics.
Hmm.
So the chances of that happening are not high. I also got rid of Port Town, which is basically the same thing, except this one you have to reveal a plains or an island. I got rid of Horizon Canopy because I don't like hurting myself. I know David said life's a resource, but I don't want to give up my resources. Glacial Fortress also got the cut. This enters the battlefield tapped unless you control a plains or an island. Same reason for the Snarls and the Port Town, just, not enough. And then lastly, I got rid of all 3 thriving lands because I hate these lands. I hate having to remember what color I picked. Thriving Grove, Thriving Heath, and Thriving Isle are all gone. They can tap for a green, a white, or a blue, or whatever color you pick, and I just hate it.
Yeah, I get why you cut all those cards. Sometimes adding way too many cards that come in tapped makes the deck a lot slower. You added those cards that come in untapped, so just easy swap in my opinion. But is that going to do it for all of your removals of the deck?
That's gonna do it, buddy.
All right. So, thinking back about your additions, we gave you $100 to add into the deck. What was the total amount of money you spent to make this deck a little bit better?
Hunter, I am happy to say that I came in basically just right at budget. We're at $101.86. So let's just round up to an even 102.
All right, you are a little bit over, but I will still give it to you. But that is going to do it. If you guys wanted to see Steven's entire deck list, check the description where you'll find the link to the Moxfield account. Go ahead and play test it. See if you like it. But before we finish up, Steven, you got any final thoughts you want to say about the deck itself?
So this deck can be really fun. And if you are brand new to Magic, you really like Doctor Who, I actually would probably pick this deck up just because of the fact you can swap out your commanders so easily just with the base deck. I also do think that the only unfortunate thing with this deck is there's really not like a lot of wiggle room or play to add the cards from the other Commander Precons from Doctor Who. into this one that makes sense for what you want to do. I think that's really the only thing I did not like about it because I tried really hard to just put in cards that are strictly Doctor Who because that was my goal originally, but could not really make it work for what I wanted to do. I think that was really my only complaint. I mean, I think all the additions, this deck can go really nuts really quickly, and even after a board wipe, it's really not. I never really felt any pain. I guess.
Yeah, I understand what you mean by trying to find the other Doctor Who cards that fit in the deck. All four of these decks I also felt like were so different from each other. It was also a very difficult task to add more Doctor Who cards. Well, that is going to do it for us today. If you guys liked that video, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Leave a comment down below. Do you agree with all of these cards that Steven added to the deck? Do you think that he maybe missed something? Let us know. Maybe he took something out that you guys really think he should kept in. Also let us know. Always interested to hear you guys' opinions. And check the description where you'll find not only a link to the Mox Field, but also links to all of our social media accounts. That's TikTok, Twitter, or X, and Instagram. That's at Guys at Magic for each one. And once again, quick reminder, you will also find the link to our Patreon. That's right. Check it out. See all the extra footage that we're not putting on YouTube. Maybe enter some giveaways, all that stuff. And until the next video, hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Peace.
Bye.